The night was thick with fog as I drove down the desolate country road. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, and the rhythmic hum of the engine was the only companion in the eerie darkness. I was exhausted, my eyelids heavy with fatigue, when I saw her silhouette in the distance, a lone figure standing by the roadside, thumb extended, hitchhiking. Curiosity mingled with concern as I approached. Her appearance was unsettling, a pale face hidden beneath long, wet strands of dark hair, and her clothing clung to her like a second skin. Despite the cold, she wore a tattered white dress that seemed out of place on this lonely road. I slowed down, hesitating for a moment. What would possess someone to be out here in the dead of night, miles away from civilization? Against my better judgment, I pulled over, and she opened the door without a word. The interior of the car seemed to chill instantly as she settled into the seat beside me. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the purr of the engine. "I've been waiting for someone like you." "Where are you headed?" I asked, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling that crept over me. "Just a bit farther down this road. I'll guide you," she replied, her eyes fixed on the mist-shrouded horizon. As we drove in silence, the atmosphere inside the car grew thick with tension. I stole glances at her from the corner of my eye, but she remained fixated on the road ahead. Her silence was unnerving, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to her presence than met the eye. After what felt like an eternity, she directed me to a desolate cemetery that materialized from the fog. The rusted gates creaked open as if welcoming us to an otherworldly realm. My heart quickened its pace, and a shiver ran down my spine. "Stop here," she commanded, pointing to a weathered gravestone. The air inside the car seemed to congeal, and a chill settled over me as I parked in front of the worn marker. "Why are we here?" I stammered, my gaze fixed on the eerie surroundings. She turned to me, her eyes gleaming in the dim light. "I need you to do something for me. Something important." A sense of dread settled in the pit of my stomach as she handed me a small, tarnished locket. "Place this on the grave, and my soul will finally find peace." Against my instincts, I stepped out of the car, the cold night air biting through my clothes. The locket felt heavy in my hand as I approached the grave, the fog swirling around the headstones like spectral fingers. The name on the gravestone was barely legible, worn away by the passage of time. I hesitated, glancing back at the woman in the car. Her eyes pleaded with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. With a deep breath, I laid the locket on the grave, the metal clinking against the cold stone. As soon as it made contact, a gust of wind swept through the cemetery, extinguishing the dim light inside the locket. I turned to look at the woman, but she was no longer in the car. Panic set in as I scanned the misty graveyard, her figure nowhere to be found. The weight of the night pressed down on me, and I stumbled back to the car, heart pounding. As I drove away from the cemetery, the fog seemed to retreat, revealing the moon casting an ethereal glow on the landscape. The weight that had settled in my chest lifted, replaced by a haunting sense of emptiness. Days passed, but the memory of that night lingered like a ghostly presence. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had stepped into a realm beyond the living, a place where the boundary between this world and the next blurred. Late one evening, as I passed by that desolate country road, I saw her again, standing by the roadside, thumb extended, hitchhiking. The fog closed in around her like a cloak, and her eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. But this time, I drove past, refusing to succumb to the spectral call. As I glanced in the rearview mirror, the figure vanished into the mist, leaving behind an empty road and the haunting echoes of a vanishing hitchhiker's plea for salvation.